Good afternoon, everyone. As Charles said, I'm an accountant for digital affairs and space policy at the delegation of the European Union in the UK. I'm based in London, actually, but I could not travel to Liverpool today, which is really sad because I think it would have been great just to meet everyone over there and have some exchanges. Brenda, Linda, let's meet once you're back in London, because I think that we probably have a lot of things to talk about. I'm going to be sharing some slides that I prepared. I'm assuming that you're seeing them. If not,
see them.
Please shout. Yeah. So I think that there's a lot of commonalities between what I'm going to be saying now and what Brenda was explaining. I think that the common denominator that we are seeing is that, especially so after COVID, we all were facing this situation where there were no chips in the market. There were some very surreal situations like, oh no, fridges cannot be manufactured, but it started from fridges, cars. So we really were facing a situation where the supply chains were not working properly. And I think that brought a larger question to everyone's attention. And as Brenda was saying, we all started thinking about what can be done. It's not only about de-risking and reducing the probability that similar situations might happen in the future, but it's also about making sure that as likely-minded partners, we can face a demand that is only going to be increasing over the coming years. Initially, my colleague Marjolein Bauer from the Dutch embassy was going to deliver this speech. As you know, the Netherlands hosts ASML, which is one of the biggest players in the manufacturing of machines for semiconductors. But that's very much an exception to the rule. I think that, as Brenda was mentioning, we do see that there's a lot of gaps that need to be filled, and in a world that's so full of uncertainties at the moment, security of supply and economic security as a broader concept are going to start occupying a central space. I probably have too many slides, but I thought that since they're going to be shared with you, it's good that you have all the information. I'm going to be talking about three main aspects. I'll be presenting the European Chips Act, which is very similar to what Brenda was presenting. So it's basically an initiative to try to boost European production of semiconductors. Then I'm going to say a couple of words on the CHIPS Fund, which is basically a financial boost for the industry. And I'll close my remarks saying a couple of words about the CHIPS joint undertaking, which I would imagine that a lot of you are familiar with. The European Chips Act entered into force, it's not even a year ago. You've got the links in the presentation, but basically the key question about the CHIPS Act is that it deals with, it comes to address the problem from a three-pronged approach. First, it's an approach on infrastructure building, and that's what we call the Chips for Europe initiative. Second, addressing the problem of security of supply to try to create a pan-European label for in order to increase, at the end of the day, trust and make sure that security of supply issues can be addressed and that we can make supply chains more resilient. And the third and final pillar, it's a monitoring mechanism that basically brings together the tools of the 27 EU member states in order to create a pan-European alert system that can help us address issues as they come or as we see them coming. On the first pillar, Tips for Europe initiative, I think Europe is very strong in a lot of the basic industry. We've got a powerful network of SMEs, a lot of R&D, and we've got a lot of public expenditure. The problem many times is that there's a gap between the innovation to market chain, which is an issue that many of our economies are facing, and there is where the Tips for Europe initiative comes in. A first element of that is the creation of what we call a design platform. The design platform basically tries to bring everybody together. So what we see is that many times basic science is not put to work, and in order to make those connections between academic researchers, SMEs and large companies, a design platform is basically an attempt to bring everybody under the same roof, offering a single virtual cloud-based access to everyone and to all these resources that are out there, but that many times are not accessible just because of the information overflow that I think we all face on our day-to-day work in our jobs. In addition to that, and that might be very interesting for you, we're creating a network of what we call competence centers. So there's going to be at least 27 competence centers across the European Union. That is one center in each member state. The larger member states, of course, are going to have more than one, but basically they are going to be your access points in order to try to get necessary information about what are the opportunities out there, what are the calls for proposals that might be open, how can we access the different funding lines that are now being developed and opened. All in all, with the intention to basically join forces and make Europe more stronger and more resilient all at once. The pillar number 2 consists basically of creating some sort of quality labels. These quality labels, basically the 2 of them that you can see on the screen, what we call the Open EU Foundries, so OEFs, or the Integrated Production Facilities, IPFs. The difference between the 2 is basically an integrated production facility is designed to supply one's own company or one's own group. So in principle, it's not open to third parties. The Open EU Foundries are open for third-party suppliers so that they can supply, so that they can provide products and that they can source products from them. Those labels are not easy to get, but once a company manages to obtain one, they do get a beneficial treatment for a number of stuff. We're going to be talking later about the 4 pilot lines for TIPS that the TIPS Act sets up, but it does give a sort of priority access, while at the same time providing the public administration and other players with a sort of trust label that can allow for a swifter sourcing of the necessary materials, and we are talking here throughout the supply chain. Finally, the 3rd pillar, the monitoring and crisis response mechanism. We have realized that many times we've got, so because of the mere structure of the European Union, there's a lot of overlaps, and many times member states are not talking to each other. So the monitoring crisis response mechanism tries to address precisely that issue. By bringing everybody together, our idea is to monitor the status of the value chain, and also especially to be able to respond. We know that supply chains are going to be put under strain sooner or later. The question is, how do we reply to that? And the monitoring crisis response is Europe's reply to the situation. It consists of a number of toolboxes, a number of coordination mechanisms, all in all in an attempt to try to prioritize and make sure that there's a single and unified response to the issues that might come up in relation to chips production. And importantly, it also has been mentioned, I think that everybody is aware of the geopolitics. At the moment, the EU always attempts to be a multilateral player, and that's why we are developing a number of partnerships with likely-minded partners. As you see it in the screen, so we've got partnerships already ongoing with Japan, South Korea, Singapore, Canada. The US and India have got, or we have with them, what we call the Trade and Technology Council, and in both of them, semiconductors are a very important element. Of course, the multilateral scene is also key, and we are pursuing and pushing for open and frank exchanges, either in the context of the government's meetings on semiconductors or the OECD. On the CHIPS Fund, and we're getting now into the question of money. Many times I think that regulation is not, or is perceived as just being something restricting innovation or stopping innovation. The CHIPS Act is accompanied by a huge fund, actually two funds, in order to try to mobilize resources. There's a big public chunk of expenditure on the basis of what we call the European Innovation Council, which relates to Horizon Europe, which, as you may know, is the world's largest research program, and a research program that the UK rejoined 4 months ago, so on the 1st of January 2024. In addition to that, we've got the mechanism of InvestEU, which tries to mobilize resources from the public and the private sector in order to funnel it all to the semiconductors industry. And finally, and I think that this might be of interest, there's the question of the CHIPS joint undertaking. As the Horizon or the research programs are designed, they're also accompanied by what we call joint undertakings. They are basically a sort of public-private partnership which try to unlock funding and investments, and there's one that was created at the same time as the CHIPS Act was enacted, which is called the CHIPS Joint Undertaking. The first call on the pilot lines was already launched on the 1st of December. It closed on the 29th of February, but there's going to be much more coming up. As you see from the numbers there, we're talking about almost 8 billions to be unlocked by the end of 2027. And why 2027? Because 27 is the end of the what we call the multi-annual financial framework. So after 2027, there will most likely be another program that will try to unlock similar amounts of investments, both coming from the public and the private sectors, to try to funnel all these investments into the industry. The CHIPS joint undertaking has got 4 basic objectives, which I tried to summarize here. First one is what we call the innovative pilot lines. So far, we have identified 4 pilot lines, which are the ones that you are seeing on the screen right now. And there's a number of calls for proposals whereby companies can apply for funding under the different programs of the joint undertaking. As an EU program, we do encourage and foster collaboration across borders, not only, of course, with the member states of the European Union, but also outside of the European Union. So if you're interested, I think it's definitely an opportunity to pursue. The 4 programs, the 4 pilot lands are now taking shape already, and the consortia are being are building up already. So it's a very good moment to try to get involved. The second main objective of the CHIPS joint undertaking is going to be the design platform that we were talking about. We're also going to be seeing a call for proposals on that coming up very soon. So you should certainly keep an eye out for that. The competence centers that we were also talking about, they're going to be, or our intention is that they become your one-stop shop in order to access all of these calls for proposals that we're talking about. And finally, there's a question of quantum. We're going to be seeing a lot of calls for proposals and a lot of efforts going into the development of quantum chips. And 2024 is also the magic year where we're probably going to be seeing certainly a lot of movement on that. On the CHIPS joint undertaking, as I was saying, it's made up of the 27 member states of the European Union, plus a number of trade associations of companies in the sector, plus Israel, Norway, Iceland, and Turkey. Those 4 countries joined since the very beginning. The UK, and we're very happy that that was the case, decided to join on the 13th of March 2024. As you may be aware, 2024 has been quite a year in the revamping of EU-UK relations. We've seen on the 1st of January, we saw the UK rejoining Horizon Europe, which is the research program, and the Copernicus program, which is our program for satellites and Earth observation. Then came the UK's request to join the CHIPS joint undertaking, and barely a month ago, the UK requested to join another joint undertaking, this time on high-performance computing. The request was accepted by the board of the joint undertaking, and the UK is now part of that joint undertaking. That means that companies based in the UK can apply for funding under the different calls that are published either under Horizon or under the different joint undertakings. Where to find more information? I've put just a number of links here that I thought that could be useful for you. InvestEU, that's the program to try to unlock both equity and debt in relation to chips manufacturing. And on the chips joint undertaking, which is where most of the money is right now, you've got a number of hyperlinks over there. First, you've got the hyperlink to the joint undertaking as such. It is there that all the calls for proposals are going to be published, so you should definitely keep an eye on that. Bear also in mind that UKRI is the main point of access for UK companies. So UKRI can provide you with a lot of information on how it works, how you have to apply, how do you build a consortium, and so forth. The hyperlink that I've included there is some slides that UKRI used for an info seminar following the UK's joining of the joint undertaking. And last but not least, do bear in mind that the embassies of the different EU member states and also this delegation, we are also happy to serve as information access points because of what I was saying before, that we foster collaboration across borders. We think that it's important that companies work together. It's important to build bridges with likely-minded partners, and therefore you should definitely keep an eye and do not hesitate to reach out to the different embassies. Most of them have got attaches covering science or covering digital matters, and they'll be very happy to either help directly or to forward your request to the appropriate national administration. And that's all on my side. Thank you very much for everything, Charles and Tina. Sorry for not being there with you today. And I hope that the rest of the sessions and the drinks, of course, go very well.